reached out yesterday, as well as almost every day. She has a very serious family situation with a loved one who is in hospice care, and she was not able to be here today, and she asked me to request an adjournment on her behalf, and so I'm doing that for her.
And that'll be asked to
Miss O'Neill.
Number 2, Nichole O'Neill only. We also decided that we would proceed with those witnesses we can proceed with that do not involve Miss O'Neill, just for the sake of moving forward.
That's correct, Your Honor.
At the end, or at the conclusion of that, then we'll set this matter a couple of weeks out to give Ms. Stout an opportunity to rejoin us and represent Ms. O'Neill as we go forward.
That's a correct statement, Your Honor.
All right. Corpus, I don't know if you want to remove Ms. O'Neill or if you want her to remain.
I don't know if Miss O'Neill wishes to remain. Maybe that would be Miss O'Neill. Do you want to stay in the courtroom? Or the evidence that they're going to introduce today is going to be Mr. Soto's statement and Mr. Rasnick's statement. Neither of those statements can be used against you. But if you want to stay in the courtroom to hear, you're still fine. No? Judge, I've explained to Ms. O'Neill that what we would be doing today would be taking testimony that does not relate directly to her portion of the case. I asked her if she wishes to remain in the courtroom, and she does not. Is that correct, Ms. O'Neill?
Yes.
All right. Okay. Are we ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor. We'd ask for the mutual sequestration be continued. I'd ask an exception be made for the officer in charge and for David Madrigal, Jr., who's already testified and is a representative of the victim's family in the case. Beyond that, we have our first witness. That would be Detective McIntyre here, and we're ready to go.
Ladies and gentlemen in the audience, if there are any other witnesses who may testify in this matter today or in a future hearing, please step into the hallway until further notice. Call your witness.
Here this time, call Detective McIntyre. He's got 5 and 6 up there.
You're not changing what you're saying. Just the prosecutor here.
Please raise your right hand, sir. You swear to affirm and tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir, I do.
Thank you, sir. Please have a seat. You may begin when you're ready.
Thank you very much. Sir, can you begin by stating your name and your affiliation?
McIntyre. I'm employed by the City of Detroit as a police officer. I'm currently assigned to the homicide section.
How long have you been a police officer?
16 years.
How long have you been with the homicide section?
3 years.
I'll direct your attention back to March the 10th of this year, 2016. Were you working that evening?
Yes, sir.
And how did you become involved in the cases before the court today?
I became involved with this case because I worked with Sergeant Lance Sullivan, who was the officer in charge of the case.
And in assisting Sergeant Sullivan, did you conduct an interview on March the 10th of 2016 at about 11:28 p.m.?
Yes, sir, I did.
Where did that take place at?
The interview took place in room 517 at police headquarters.
And is that the one downtown on 3rd Street?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
And who did you conduct that interview with?
I interviewed Timmy Soto, sir.
Prior to conducting that interview with Mr. Soto, did you advise him of anything?
Yes, I did. I advised Mr. Soto of his constitutional rights.
And did you use anything to assist you in advising him of those rights?
Yes, sir. We have a form that lists out what a person's constitutional rights are. I read that form to Mr. Soto. I asked Mr. Soto if he could read and write. He stated that he could not read, but he was able to sign his name and volunteer to give a statement.
Very good. Taking a look at proposed exhibit number 5 up there, do you recognize that piece of paper?
Yes, sir, I do.
Is that in fact the advice rights form that you worked through with Mr. Soto?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. If you could read, how did you convey those rights to him?
I read all 5 of the statements to Mr. Soto, and at the end of reading them, I asked him did he understand what his rights were, and Mr. Soto said yes.
Okay. And did he do anything to acknowledge that he understood those rights and chose to make a statement anyway?
Yes, sir. Mr. Soto signed the document.
All right, at this time, I turn over to the witness over to defense counsel to be argued as to the knowing and voluntary nature of the waiver.
Judge, can I have a moment with my client? Sure. Thank you. Judge, I had an opportunity to speak to Mr. Soto, and he indicates to me that for today's purposes only, he's willing to acknowledge that he was advised of his rights and he knowingly waived his right to have an attorney and to remain silent, and he spoke to Officer McIntyre.
All right. The court makes a finding that the defendant's statement was knowingly and voluntarily given for preliminary examination purposes. You may proceed.
Thank you very much. After Mr. Soto was advised of his rights and agreed to make a statement, did you talk to Mr. Soto?
Yes, sir, I did.
Besides yourself, who else was there to talk to Mr. Soto?
It's just myself and Mr. Soto.
And at some point in time, did you reduce his statement when he had told you into writing?
Yes, sir, I did.
Taking a look at proposed exhibit number 6, do you recognize that document?
Yes, sir, I do.
And what is that?
This is it was a 2-page statement that I asked Mr. Soto questions and he gave answers to.
Now, it's fair to say you talked to him about beyond what's recorded in that statement, correct?
Yes, sir. The interview was almost 3 hours, if I'm not mistaken.
And that room is audio and video recorded?
Yes, sir, it is.
Very good. Can you please read for us the questions that you wrote down and the answers that you recorded from proposed exhibit number
6? Yes, sir. First question to Mr. Soto was, do you understand that I am conducting a criminal investigation? Mr. Soto's reply was, yeah. Second question, do you know who killed David Madrigal? Mr. Soto replied, no. Question, did you help kill David Madrigal? Mr. Soto answered, no. Did you help steal from David Madrigal? Mr. Soto's answer was, I already answered all of that. Next question was, who burned David Madrigal's 2015 Ford Explorer? Mr. Soto replied, I did. Next question, how much money was stolen from David Madrigal? Mr. Soto replied, $1,500. Next question, what else was taken from David Madrigal? Mr. Soto replied, 2 guns. Next question, did Nichole O'Neill kill David Madrigal? Mr. Soto's answer was no. Me, her, and Devin was together. We left. Final question for Mr. Soto was, do you have anything else to add to this investigation? Mr. Soto replied, no. I told you guys everything.
And at what time was that interview concluded?
The interview was concluded at 2:10 a.m. Date would have been March 11, 2016.
And when you concluded that interview, what happens with Mr. Soto?
Mr. Soto is then transported to the Detroit Detention Center for housing or processing.
Did you yourself have any other further interaction with Mr. Soto that evening?
Not that I recall. If I did, it would have been briefly.
I have no further questions for this witness.
Thank you. Good morning, officer.
Good morning, sir.
Was this the first day that, the first day that you met Mr. Soto?
No, sir, it was not the first day.
And when had you met Mr. Soto previous to this?
I don't remember the exact day when Sergeant Sullivan and I had first interviewed Mr. Soto, but it would have been, I want to say late January, early February, maybe.
And was that interview rendered into a written or video form?
It was a video interview. It was not written down.
And about how long was that initial interview that occurred before this interview?
About 2 hours, give or take.
All right. And on this day, when did, first of all, where did the interview take, where did this interview take place, the one we're talking about right now, the one that you just testified to?
That interview took place at our police headquarters in room 517.
And where was Mr. Soto prior to being at police headquarters, if you know?
Wayne County Jail.
do you know about what time it was that Mr. Soto was brought from the Wayne County Jail over to the homicide or the police headquarters building?
I would say the time would have been between 10:30 and 11 o'clock p.m. on the night of March 10th.
Okay. And when did you begin the video recording of your conversation with him or your interrogation of him that evening?
11:28 p.m.
Was there a discussion prior to, a discussion between yourself and Mr. Soto prior to you giving him his constitutional rights?
As far as like small talk or anything like that, you mean?
Whatever. I just want to know, was there a discussion?
I don't believe we had any discussion about anything, sir, no.
Did you know in advance what you were going to talk to him about?
I don't know.
Did you tell him what you were going to interview him about before you started interviewing?
I believe I stated that we had some more questions about David Madrigal's death, and I told him that's what he was here for.
All right. Do you know if Mr. Soto was taking any meds while he was in jail, medications?
No, I do not, sir.
Did you ask him if he was taking any meds while he was in jail?
No, I did not.
Prior to making, and I'll just speak for now about this particular interrogation, prior to making this interrogation or conducting it, did you make him any promises regarding his testimony?
No, sir.
Were there any threats made?
No, sir.
Did you ever tell him what sort of punishments he was facing should he be convicted or plead to this crime?
I believe I mentioned that if he's convicted, he could spend the rest of his life in jail. Yes, sir.
And was that mentioned to him at the initial interview or prior to this interview? And there was another interview that you said occurred before the one...
No, that was not mentioned in the previous interviews with Mr. Soto, no.
Okay, so prior to this interview, you let him know that he could be facing the rest of his life in prison. Is that correct?
During the interview at March 10th, I explained to him that he could spend the rest of his life in prison if he's convicted of this.
Okay.
In the other interviews beforehand, no, that was not mentioned.
All right. In this interview, you asked the question, did you help steal from David Madrigal? And the answer from Mr. Soto was, I already answered all that. Yes? Is he referring to the interrogation that you conducted that same night?
Yes, sir.
Are the questions that you posed to him in this interview that's rendered in writing different than questions you posed in the video interrogation?
No, sir.
So you're just extracting some things that you wanted to put in writing?
Yes, sir. The interview was about 2 hours, so he wanted to end it, so I finalized and wrote down the questions and answers.
All right. What was the approximate length of this entire interview from the beginning of when you met him until when you signed off on this?
Close to 3 hours.
And who was present during the interrogation?
Just myself and Mr. Soto. Sergeant Sullivan came in at the tail end of it as we ended the interview. And Mr. Soto asked to leave and he was taken away.
All right. All right, just a moment. No further questions.
Did you have any questions?
No, sir, I don't. Thank you.
Can you redirect?
One moment, please. No further questions, thank you.
Thank you, sir. You may step.
Thank you, Your Honor.
At this time, we'll call Sergeant Lance Sullivan to the stand. Take 7.
Raise your right hand. You swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you, sir. Please have a seat.
Thank you. May I proceed?
You ready?
Thank you. Sir, can I tell the court your full name and occupation?
Yes, my name is Lance Sullivan. I'm a sergeant with the Detroit Police Department Homicide Section.
And what's your relationship to the case that's before the court today?
I'm the officer in charge of the case.
And we're going to kind of limit our inquiry today into your conversations with Mr. Soto. I want to direct your attention to March the 10th of 2016. Did you speak with Mr. Soto that evening or early morning of the following day?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. Would that be after Detective McIntyre spoke with Mr. Soto?
Yes.
Had you ever interviewed Mr. Soto before in relation to this case?
Yes, sir, I did.
And when did that take place?
That would have been February 2nd, 2016.
And where was that interview conducted at?
That was in Detroit Police Public Safety, 5th floor.
What prompted that interview? Why did that happen back in February?
Well, a local news media released some information that Mr. Soto was arrested, and they named him as a person of interest in this case, in the homicide case. So the purpose of that interview was to basically build rapport with him.
And at that time, was Mr. Soto arrested on this case?
No, it was not.
Following the February 2nd interview, did you have any further contact or conversations with Mr. Soto?
Yes, on March 10th.
March 10th, gotcha. On March 10th, how did it come to occur that after talking to Detective McIntyre, Mr. Soto also wound up talking to you?
I was monitoring part of the interview with Detective McIntyre and Mr. Soto. I felt that I had rapport with him by talking to him previously, and that I think it would have helped the conversation along if I would have injected into it.
And did you do that?
Yes, sir, I did.
At some point in time, does Mr. Soto leave from police headquarters over on 3rd Avenue?
Yes.
Okay. Why does that happen? How does that happen?
The interview was completed, and he was taken back to the Wayne County Jail for housing.
What happens then?
The warrant was presented to the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office.
But after speaking to Detective McIntyre, did Mr. Soto want to talk to you?
Yes, he did.
And did you talk to him?
Yes, I did.
Was this conducted in one of those interview rooms down at headquarters?
Yes, everything was audio, video, recorded.
Okay. And this is after Detective McIntyre has written down his statement, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is it the same interview room?
Yes, it is.
Did Mr. Soto agree to talk to you?
Yes, he did.
And did he, in fact, answer some questions about what happened at Mr. Madrigal's house?
Yes, sir.
Did you reduce a portion of the questions that you asked into writing?
Yes, I did.
And did you record the answers that Mr. Soto gave to those questions?
Yes, sir, I did.
Taking a look at proposed exhibit number 7, do you recognize that?
Yes, sir.
We moved to this time. And again, had Mr. Soto already been advised of his rights by Detective McIntyre?
Yes, he has.
And he agreed to speak to you?
Yes.
I've moved to admit proposed exhibit number 7 through this witness.
No objection.
Receive.
Can you please read for us the questions that you asked and the answers you received from Mr. Soto?
Yes. Question. Sir, is it true Detective McIntyre went over your constitutional rights with you? Excuse me. Answer, yes. Question. Is it true you agreed to speak with us, Detective McIntyre and myself? Answer, yes.
Wait, I'm assuming that my objection from the previous hearing is continuing, that nothing Mr. Soto says in this interrogation with Sergeant Sullivan can be used against Mr. Rasnick.
That's understood.
Okay, thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Your Honor. Continue, please.
Question. Please tell me about the death of David Madrigal. Answer. Sometime before Christmas, Dave called Nicky. He said to come over to his house. It was around 11 a.m. Me, Nicky, Devin, Nicky's son, and Chris Rasnick went to Dave's. We got over there, and he was buzzed. We drank beer and a couple shots. When we first got there, he wanted to kiss and rub on Nicky. At some point, he said for me to take Devin and get him some dope, powder cocaine, and leave Nicky there. I was mad because he was rubbing on Nicky, so I made her and Devin leave with me. We left Chris at the house. We went and dropped Devin off and got some dope. Chris texted me and said he, Dave, was out of it. When we went back to Dave's and Dave was in the chair. We had a heated discussion about him touching Nicky, and he acted like he didn't give a fuck. I started having flashbacks to when I was a kid, so I hit him. Question, what type of flashbacks did you have? Answer, just how my stepdad used to touch my sisters made me flip out. Question, how did you hit Dave? Answer, there was a weight plate already in the living room. I picked it up and hit him twice in the head. He was snoring. The house was already ransacked by Chris. He told me the safe was upstairs. We just started loading everything up. Question, what did you take? Answer, safe and 2 guns with the truck. One was a gauge by the door, and the other was a .380 we found in the back seat of the truck. Question, who left in what vehicles? Answer, me and Chris hopped in the truck. I was driving. Nikki was in her Impala, already leaving. She went down Vaughn towards Warren, and we went towards the freeway. Question, what happened next? Answer, we went back to the hood and rode around for a while and went to Angel's house. Question, who is Angel? Answer, my friend. I introduced Chris to him. Question, please continue. Answer, Angel didn't know anything about what we did. At Angel's, me and Chris carried the safe into the front door and down to the basement. Once down there, we beat the safe open, me and Chris. Me and Chris split the money from the safe. There was a total of $1,500. Question, where did you go after that? Answer, we went and grabbed some weed and drove around. He, Chris, was getting tripped on by his girl, so I dropped him off. Question, who was driving around? Answer, me, Nikki, Brianna, and Chris. That was when we threw the bag from the truck. I put my beer can in it first, and Brianna threw it because I asked her to. I had dropped Chris off, and then dropped Nikki and Brianna off. I drove for a while, and then called Nikki and told her to meet me at Green gas station. Continuing, Nikki and Brianna met me. They were in Michelle's, Nikki's mom, white van. They followed me to the other side of Michigan. I poured gas on the truck and used a lighter to light it. I ran to the van and jumped in the driver's side slider and made Nikki drive off. We went back to Michelle's and I got the Impala. Question, did you go anywhere that evening? Answer, yes. To the Best Western down on 75. Question, did you see any jewelry or a Judge handgun at Dave's house? Answer, no. Question, is it true I read this statement to you? Answer, yes. Question, is that the truth? Answer, yes. Question, is there anything you wish to change? Answer, no. Question, is there anything else? Answer, to the family, I'm sorry for what I did. The flashbacks made me snap.
Now, Detective Sullivan, did you also go to the scene the night that Mr. Madrigal was found in his home?
Yes, sir.
Were there any of those flat disc weights in the home?
Yes, there were.
Were there any of them in the living room by where Mr. Madrigal was?
I don't recall seeing flat disc weights in that room.
What room were the flat disc weights in?
They would have been on the first floor in the back room. There's actually a weight room set up.
What time was the written statement completed at?
3:35 a.m.
Why so late in the, or early in the morning, late in the evening to early in the morning?
Well, the whole operation, if you will, there was an arrest operation put in place, and it was put in place for the afternoon. And then the arrest of the defendants, the way that it was ordered, Mr. Soto came over later in the evening.
And what was the purpose of kind of arresting all 3 suspects at once?
It was so we could separate them and talk to them in a systematic way.
And this interview, was it also audio and video recorded?
Yes, sir, the whole thing.
Just can you explain the procedure when you do one of these interviews, at what point do you write stuff down? For the suspect?
Usually at the end. It's basically a very relaxed, typically a relaxed atmosphere, and a lot of talking, a lot of rapport building, a lot of questions. Not necessarily going right after what we need to know, but getting to know who the person is, asking if they have any questions, and then eventually moving into the actual interrogation part. And then once it's determined or set that the correct answers are, or what we believe to be the correct answers are there, then we ultimately ask him if he wanted to write a statement in this case, and then reduce it to writing.
Very good. I have no further questions at this time. Mr. O'Neill.
Thank you. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Is it your testimony that you believe that Mr. Soto was arrested on February 2nd, 2016?
No, sir.
When was he arrested?
I don't recall the date, but it was in January.
Okay. He was arrested prior to anybody else being arrested in this case, correct?
Yes, sir.
At what point did he become a person of interest in this case as opposed to the case that he had already been arrested in?
He was a person of interest probably within 2 weeks, give or take,
2 weeks out
of the actual homicide.
How much time passed between the end of Mr. Officer McIntyre's written questions after the video interrogation? How much time passed after that until you began to talk to Mr. Soto?
It was a matter of minutes. Maybe upwards of maybe 15 minutes, 10 minutes, top.
And during that time, where is Mr. Soto?
He was being, in the process of being transported to the back to the Wayne County Jail.
And what caused that process to stop?
And Mr. Soto advised the officer he was with that he wished to talk to me.
And you were there because you were watching the interrogation?
At which point?
I'm sorry, you were there that night during the McIntyre-Soto interrogation. You were there in the room, or you were there just watching?
No, I was talking to Miss O'Neill. I was viewing part of that interview, and then at one point during the interview with Detective McIntyre, I entered the room.
Okay.
Hours of conversation, questions and answers.
All right. Do you know whether or not Mr. Soto was getting any medications at the Wayne County Jail
At what point?
prior to being interviewed by you and Mr. Officer McIntyre?
No, I did not know.
Had you already interrogated anybody else relative to this case?
Yes.
Who had you interviewed?
Miss O'Neill.
Miss O'Neill?
Yes.
And Mr. Rasnick?
No, I did not talk to Mr. Rasnick.
Had you made any promises to Mr. Soto regarding this case?
No, sir.
Had you conveyed any threats? By that I mean telling him generally what he's looking at, making him know the consequences.
I don't know if I'd call that or try to perceive that as a threat by telling them what the possible consequences were, but I don't know for sure, but usually I do bring up what the possible consequences are in the crime. So.
And it's your statement, and I just want to make sure I get this straight, that Mr. Soto was on his way back to either the Detroit Detention Center or Wayne County Jail, and he's the one who made it known to someone that he wanted to talk to you?
Yes, if I may. In fact, he made it to the parking structure and then advised an officer that he wanted to talk to me. So when the officer brought Mr. Soto back into the audio-video recorded room, I went over that with him. Is it true you wanted to talk to me? You wanted to continue? And he agreed yes.
Okay. Judge, just can I have a moment with my client? Thank you. At some point, did you tell Mr. Soto that he was facing 35 to life for this?
I don't recall. I don't think I would have said 35 to life. I don't know how you could come up with that number.
Right.
So
Okay.
I don't recall saying that.
You don't. All right, thank you very much. No further questions.
I have a couple questions.
Okay.
Sergeant Sullivan, you've described the interrogation method as a relaxed atmosphere, is that correct?
As far as how I perceive it, yes.
Okay, that's how you do it, right?
Yes, ma'am.
You would agree with me that other officers have a different tactic during interrogation than the relaxed atmosphere that you use, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, nothing further.
Can you redirect?
No, Your Honor, none.
Thank you, sir. You may start.
Thank you.
This time we'll call Detective Moses Jimenez.
What's Michelle's mom's last name? Oh, she's an O'Neill too. Okay. I'm gonna try to talk to her.
Sir, please step forward and give your name and spelling to the court reporter.
M-Y. Let's see it.
Please raise your right hand. So you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you, sir. Please have a seat. You may begin when you're ready.
Thank you very much. Sir, can you begin by stating your name and your occupation?
Moises Jimenez, currently employed with the Detroit Police Department Homicide Section, Homicide Task Force.
And what's your rank or your position?
A detective.
Detective Jimenez, I want to direct your attention back to March the 9th, 2016, about 10:05 p.m. On that date, at about that time, were you working?
Yes, sir.
And did you conduct an interview with someone who's identified to you as Mr. Christian Anthony Rasnick?
Yes, sir.
Do you see that person in court today?
Yes, sir. I'll be the gentleman with the yellow jumpsuit on that side of the first gentleman.
We'll stipulate that it's Mr. Rasnick and he's present in the courtroom.
Indicate for the thank you. Indicate for the record the defendant, Mr. Rasnick. Where did this interview take place?
At police headquarters?
Was this interview audio and video recorded?
Yes, it was.
Prior to conducting the interview with Mr. Rasnick, did you advise him of anything?
Yes, sir. I advised Mr. Rasnick of his constitutional rights, verbatim from the sheet given to us by the Detroit Police Department.
Very good. Taking a look at proposed exhibit number 8. Do you recognize that piece of paper?
Yes, sir. This is the original constitutional rights forms that I read to Mr. Rasnick.
And can you explain to the court, how did you work through that rights form with Mr. Rasnick?
We read them out loud, I would say together. I asked him to read the first one. After he reads the first right, I asked him to sign his initial. I continue with 2, 3, 4, and 5 in the paragraph.
Yes.
Which he initialed, and he also signed at the end.
Very good. Did you determine Mr. Rasnick's educational level?
Yes, sir. He said he attended up to the 8th grade at Emilia Earhart in Southwest Detroit.
And was Mr. Rasnick able to read that first right to you out loud?
Yes.
Any hesitation, any problems reading it to you?
No, sir.
In speaking with Mr. Rasnick, did he appear tired or hungry or anything like that?
No, sir.
Did Mr. Rasnick do anything to show that he understood each and every one of those rights?
Yes, sir. He placed his initials up by every right after we had completed that right. At the end, he signed it.
After advising of those rights, did Mr. Rasnick make a statement to you?
Yes, he did.
Move to admit proposed exhibit number 8, the advice of rights, and we turn the witness over to be voir dire as to the knowingness and voluntariness of the waiver of Miranda.
I have no questions as to knowingness and voluntariness, Judge. No objection to the admission of the exhibit.
All right. The court makes a finding that the defendant's statement was knowing and voluntarily given for exam purposes, and then you may proceed.
Thank you very much.
That was Exhibit 8.
Number 8, yes. After interviewing Mr. Rasnick, did you reduce the some of the questions that you asked and the answers you received to writing?
Yes, I did.
During the course of the interview, did you also show him some photographs?
Yes, I did.
Are those also attached to the statement in exhibit number 9?
Yes, sir. There can be a total of 4 photographs and 6 pages of statement.
Can you please read for us now the questions that you asked and the answers you received from Mr. Rasnick?
Question: do you understand your constitutional rights that I and you have read out loud? Answer: yeah. Question: tell me what happened. Answer: in his own writing, Mr. Rasnick's writing, He called me and said, I got some money we can make, and I said, okay. He came and picked me up, went back to his house and smoked. He called the guy and said, we're coming over, and when we did, they began to drink. The guy was falling asleep. That's when he looked at me and said, you ready? Knock him out. I said, no, I ain't hitting a sleeping person. So he grabbed a steel weight and hit the guy twice. And there we grabbed the safe and put it in the truck and change jar. Then we left.
Now, that portion there, is that in your handwriting or someone else's?
That's Mr. Rasnick's handwriting. Page 2. Question. When you said, parentheses, wrote, he called me, who are you referring to? Answer, Tim. Question. How long and how do you know Tim? Answer. Approximately 7 to 8 years, probably longer. He was dating my aunt, Mary Marchensky, Marcheski. She lives 2 houses down from my grandma. Question. Showing you a photo marked A, who is this? And that's when I showed him the first picture.
And that first picture, who's that a picture of?
That's going to be the first defendant with the standing close to me, Mr. Timmy.
Indicate the record defendant, Mr. Timmy Soto.
So noted.
Question. Do you remember what day this was? Answer, no. Question. Do you remember what month? No, I don't think about it. Question. Do you remember what house it was? Answer, no, but it was a house in the photograph, yes. And I'm not sure if it's the one marked C or not. Question. How long were you there? Page 3. Didn't think it was long at all. Question. Who else was there? Answer. Just us. Me, Timmy. I don't know her name, and the kid. I don't know his name either. Question. Showing you a photograph marked B. Is this the female you are referring to? And I showed him picture number B.
And who's that a photo of?
It illustrates Miss Nichole O'Neill.
What was his response when you showed him that photo?
His answer was yes. Question. What was being said on the way there? Answer. Tim said that we are just going to go in, have a couple of drinks. She was going to flirt with him, and he would fall asleep. We were going to grab the safe and just go. Question. How did it come to hurting that man? Answer. Tim said that he would be able to get away with the robbery because he knew him. Tim said that the guy knew his last name and that he knew all kinds of shit about him. Question. So what was the plan? Answer. Tim had asked me to hit him, but he, page 4, was asleep. And I didn't seem right. Question. When he asked you to hit him, did he have something in his hands? Answer, no. After I said no, I wasn't doing that. I told him that. I wasn't hitting a guy while he was sleeping. That it made no sense. He walked up and grabbed a round steel weight and stood over him and hit him twice or 3 times. But I'm pretty sure it was twice. Question. Then what happened? Mark C. And I refer to Mark C because it refers actually the victim lane as he was found, and it illustrates the room. So when he's explaining to me, he's making reference to the room and how it's laid out. Answer, I was on the other side of that wall. I could see him hit him. Then I walked straight through there behind the man and upstairs and grabbed the safe from the closet. Tim was in there ripping it out because it was bolted to the floor. We carried it downstairs and put it in the truck, his truck, the man's truck, and left. I rode the front passenger and Tim was driving. We went to that Mexican guy's house in the basement and cracked the safe. Tim and the Mexican kid got it open. There was like $1,500 in cash, a bunch of bullets, papers. Tim gave me only $400 for that. That's all. Page 5. Where did you go from there? Answer. Tim and I left out of there and went to Del Rey and met her, the girl on Mark B, on some street that starts with the letter L, Lyon or Lawrence. I'm pretty sure it was Lyon. She got in front, I got in the back. We cashed the change at Myers on Dix at Lincoln Park. Question. What was the plan to begin with? Answer. To go there and rob him because he was supposed to be asleep. Question. Then take the child? Answer. I honestly don't know. Question. How did you get in the house? Answer. He was expecting us to come over. She knew Tim and her and was expecting to come over. He didn't know me. We just walked in. It was unlocked. Question. Do you hit that man over the head? Answer. No. Question. Are you telling the truth? Page 6. Answer. Yes. Question. Do you want to say something now to the family in this statement? Answer. Yes. I'm sorry for what happened that day. No one deserves to lose a loved one. If I would have known it was going to happen, I would have stopped it. I would have left. I wouldn't have been there. Question. Is there anything you want to add or change to the statement? Answer. And Mr. Rasnick's own writing. I am so sorry for what happened to your loved one. There's no words that can say, take away your pain or the sadness he left you in. I'm sorry, there's nothing I can say nor do to bring him back, but I will help as much as I can to put that man up for what has been done. I wish I could have stopped him or never went there. Please just know I'm sorry for what has happened, and I will help justify this murder. I promise. I am truly sorry for what has happened. I'm truly sorry. And then he signed it again, and then he signed at the bottom of the page, which he signed each and every page to include the exhibits marked A, B, C, and D. And D is the picture of the victim, Mr. David Madrigal.
After you write all that down, does Mr. Rasnick have a chance to look it over?
Yes, he did, sir.
Did he do something to show that he had looked over the statement?
Yes, he put his signature at the bottom of every page except for page number 6, which he signed twice after he wrote that paragraph.
I have no further questions at this time.
Cross-examine.
Thank you. What time was Mr. Rasnick arrested?
I believe a couple hours before I talked to him, ma'am.
You started talking to him at about what time?
10?
10? Was it a little bit earlier than that?
No, 10. Because on the constitutional rights form, on the top, I put an S,
Sure.
and it says 10 p.m.
Okay, 10 p.m. is when you gave him his rights, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. You talked to him for some time before you gave him his constitutional rights, is that correct?
I could have.
I mean, the video recordings show the start time of an interrogation, is that right?
Yes,
Okay, so on the bottom of the screen somewhere, it shows the time that you begin speaking to a suspect once you walk into that room.
Once you walk into that room, it starts recording, yes.
Okay, so you would not have any dispute if the time on the recording shows around 9-ish, is that right?
If that's what the recording says, no.
You wouldn't dispute that,
No.
correct? Okay. And the time that Mr. Rasnick finished or signed that document, it's about 1:45 in the morning?
Yes,
Okay. So that's close to 5 hours or so, is that correct?
yes,
So he was arrested a few hours before that. Was he brought immediately to the homicide section?
I believe so.
All right. And then sometime a few hours later, you began talking to him and spent about 5 hours with him. Is that right?
Yes,
Okay. And during the course of that conversation, Mr. Rasnick gave you a lot of information. Is that correct?
yes,
One of the things that he told you was, I think repeatedly, he told you that he didn't want to hit Mr. Madrigal. Is that right?
that is correct.
He told you that he didn't want to hurt Mr. Madrigal. Is that correct?
That is correct.
He told you that he didn't see any point to hurting or hitting Mr. Madrigal at all. Is that correct?
That is correct.
In fact, what he told you was, I stood back, I didn't want to see or hear it. Is that correct?
Yes, he did.
And in fact, the picture that has Mr. Madrigal in it, Mr. Rasnick showed you where he was standing at the time Mr. Soto hit Mr. Madrigal. Is that correct?
That is correct,
All
ma'am.
right. And it shows that he was standing nearby but behind a wall. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
He also told you during the course of that conversation that he was really afraid of Tim Soto. Is that correct?
Yes, he was.
He told you that he was afraid not only for himself, but for his girlfriend and his family. Is that correct?
Yes.
He was cooperative with you?
Yes, he was.
You told him at about 11:52 that night that you thought that he was telling you the truth. Is that correct?
Once again, if that's what the video shows, yes, probably.
Okay. Well, you said that to him. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. And forget the time. During the course of that interrogation, that 5 hours, you told him that you thought that he was being truthful with you. Is that right?
Yes.
He asked you at one point, well, then am I still going to jail, correct?
Yes.
And your answer was not for murder. Is that right?
It could have been.
All right. You could have said that to him. You don't remember at this point?
I don't remember if I said that part.
Of course, that was something that was important to him, right?
To him.
Yeah, he kept saying, am I going to jail for murder, right? He kept asking you that during the course of the
I believe
conversation.
that he did ask me.
Okay. And you think that your answer could have been not for murder. Is that right?
It could have been.
All right. But that's not true, is it? I mean, you were looking at him for this murder of David Madrigal. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's what you had picked him up for. Is that right?
Yes.
So when you told him that he was going to jail but not for murder, that wasn't true, right?
True.
Nothing further.
Can you redirect?
One moment, please. No, Your Honor, no further questions.
Thank you, sir. You may step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yeah, with the admission of the statements against these two defendants, I think that's all we can do today without the third defendant here.
How many more witnesses do you have?
We have to recall Sergeant Sullivan. We have our arson investigator, Stan Brew. We have the Michigan State Police Trooper that pulled some videos. I think we might have a stipulation as to that. I think that's it. I believe that'll be it. Oh, we have to recall Detective Jimenez for Miss O'Neill's statement.
Okay.
So,
All right.
should be a morning.
I believe we indicated that we're going to try to do this about 2 weeks out. That should be enough time. Let's go down on Silver, and you check your schedules, see how you look approximately 2 weeks from today.
What I was going to propose is maybe the attorneys could come back Friday and get a date. I don't know if that would give Ms. Stout enough time to...
Friday, what date?
I can't just leave this out in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
It's out of control there.
Okay, so
I have a trial on the 18th for Judge Cox.
How about the week of the 16th, maybe the 16th or the 17th?
I'm available that trip. I'm going to be available.
Okay, I'm not available. I have to pick a jury on the 16th, and I have another trial starting the 17th.
Does Friday work better for you guys?
I could probably, I can do Friday, but it would have to be the afternoon. I'm teaching in Flint that morning, so I wouldn't be able to. Be here in the
Friday
morning.
afternoon?
I could do the afternoon. I am scheduled for 9 o'clock. I could probably be back here by 12-ish. So if we could set 1 o'clock.
Judge, let me just check quickly.
We also have to make sure that they're not doing domestic violence in here. Because he goes on Mondays and Fridays, but she moves around the work.
Chris, I'm in court. When are we going on our vacation?
What day Judge Jefferson's going to be here, or if she's going to be here.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, after that, I can't do it till,
Okay, so I'm calling the 19th, and I'm off.
after that, I can't do it till June 3rd.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Can we do it on the 20th?
Ju-
I can do it at the 20th.
I'll be out of town. I'll be out of town. I'll be here for half a day on the 19th and out of town on the 20th.
How about the 19th
19th in the morning.
in the morning?
Well, I have a trial starting the 17th in front of Judge Michael Hathaway. If I'm done, I certainly can be here.
I don't like that.
I don't like it either. I like it less than you, actually.
We need that.
We're going to June, folks.
Judge, if I could have half a second to pull up my calendar. I know I have a lot of trials in June.
Could we do June 3rd, that Friday in the morning?
We're going to June.
Oh, all right, well.
Said what?
Doesn't want to go to June. I don't know what to say.
13.
I'm available the week of the 23rd.
I'm going to be in trial with Judge Strong.
What about Friday the 27th?
It's Memorial Day, but...
Oh, is it Memorial?
Memorial Day
No.
weekend.
I thought Memorial Day was a Monday.
No, it's the weekend, it's the Friday before. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
If I'm done with my trial in front of Strong, I can...
Yeah, I'm
He
good.
has exams on a Friday.
What?
I don't think he goes on Friday.
He's going to go because he's going away the next weekend.
Oh.
It's that case of that musician guy.
Ooh.
You're going to be gone.
How you guys look next week, although I know that may be problematic.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to be,
I've got trials Monday and Wednesday.
I have a 4-day trial starting Monday, but and Friday I would hopefully be free.
About next Friday. The 13th. Morning or afternoon.
I have a continued homicide exam with Judge Nance, which maybe she would change that, given that that's just me and one other lawyer.
We can do it in the morning too.
Well, I'm scheduled to start with her at 11.
And maybe you'll be done by 1:30.
Is that Christina Gerges?
Oh, is there, no,
I don't
you've
think
done
that's
anything
done,
on
do you?
that?
I think you will. They're gonna have to want to take a lunch sometime. They're starting at 11.
Yeah, that's what they claim, they're going to start at 11. I'll be honest with you, it's longer than this. But, I mean, maybe if you talk to her, she would change it since it's just one defendant. It was supposed to be this Friday, but she's not going to be here. Yeah, maybe we can go do this Friday.
It looks like that's gonna be the best date. You guys, the 13th.
You start at 9,
Can you do it at 9?
I can do it at 9, but at 11 I have that exam.
Okay. Let's go down.
Yes, Your Honor, it looks like the 13th's a good day.
Mr. Casey.
And I will certainly
I'll make it work.
let you know, I can update the court and counsel as to Ms. Stout.
If we're here right on time, we can get started right at 9. Then you should be able to
Chris,
get
we don't have
that
anything on the
in for you to get
13th,
to your-
Sure, and what I was saying is that I would update you as to
Good, I'll talk to you later.
Ms. Stout and her situation.
All right, so we'll continue this matter to May 13th, 2016, 9 o'clock a.m.
Thank you very
And
much.
this will be remanded to the custody of the Wayne County Sheriff.
Yeah, I know. I hate this. Oh, my goodness.
You know, why do we have to...
Have a good day, everyone. See you.